T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the darkest corner of the internet, where we read the stars for the internet streets here, because we out here
we
like
read
that.
you guys to filth, basically.
Yep, it's our duty, it's our responsibility, and we're in season 2, so.
Yeah, we're getting up there. We are back at it with another video.
The 80th, the 80s. We're in the 80s episode.
I think 87, 88,
okay.
maybe-ish. We're right around there. When we hit 100, maybe you guys can buy us some shots.
Yeah. Shout out to those of you who are chipping in for the funds that we have.
This is what your funds provide for
They
Mike.
go a long way. It's a nice one.
This is kind of like a, I guess, unofficial part 2. So we did talk to you guys about the Mars retrograde. We wanted to make sure that we came back and we did it early. We took it through the 12 rising signs just to give you guys our hot takes on what might be happening for you guys in a little bit of like rapid fire.
Yeah.
Right? Mars and Gemini. So if you haven't seen that video, why? Go check it out. It's great.
Crucial. Now that Mars is in Gemini too. So.
It's coming into shadow as we're filming this, actually.
Yeah,
so I think it's like right about shadow now-ish.
This is my first margarita with pineapple in it.
Oh.
Splendid.
There's a first time for everything. Every time we have margaritas, I'm waiting for you to have salt all over your lip. It's my favorite part of the episode. Because you'll be talking and you just have like salt stash.
Salt damage. Shout out to Salt Babe. Yes.
Well, I mean, you want to get into it?
Let's get into it.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't already seen that episode, we take you through all the aspects and all of that. This is going to be more so for the 12 rising signs. This is going to be our Western whole sign astrology predictions for the Mars retrograde. So Mars is going to be pretty much in Gemini for like almost 7 months. So we saw it enter recently. It's going to hang out in Gemini really until February, March of 2023. You want the specific dates? I don't have them, sorry, but I know that they are on the other video. And the retrograde looks like it's starting the early morning of October 30th, 2022.
To January 15th.
Just after the eclipses that we had. There will be an eclipse. We're doing this in advance, but just after that solar eclipse in Scorpio, in between the lunar eclipse in Taurus. And I was just telling Mike before we started, I was like, nothing scarier than like Halloween with Mars retrograde in Gemini. Yeah.
And then it stops the retrograde at like Capricorn season, like right before Aqua.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a dirty one.
So, let's take it through the rising signs. What's your hot take on Aries and Aries rising horoscopes for Mars retrograde, especially being that that's their chart ruler?
Yeah, that's very true. We know Jupiter is gonna crip walk back out there rising. So this is all coinciding your evolution. And this Mars transit for many Aries risings, I think, since like the last time we had the eclipse, I think early 2012-ish or whatever, is maybe more assertive declaration of your voice than ever. If you think since a decade from now, you had to go through trials in finding your voice, integrating your voice, expressing your voice. It's coming back around to show not only how much you've grown, but square Neptune and also aspecting Scorpio, how you're fundamentally transforming out of that. So it's kind of like being a business owner, going through the trials of being a business owner. You've now had a successful business, and whereas you were finding your voice as a business owner, now you're expressing your voice as a successful business owner and someone who's gone through that experience. But for some of you, this could be you starting to build your business too, but you're definitely going to be changing the way you perform certain skills, and it's almost like you're speaking a Martian language. So I think Aries risings are going to get in more fistfights and arguments than ever, to be honest, and just a lot of miscommunication and a lot of nuance and inflection just being taken the wrong way. But
I think of
such is
Mars
life.
like being in a mercurial sign and in the third house. It's like a being at like a crossroads in how you communicate and like what you've learned. And when Mars turns retrograde, it's like inward. So it's like learning, I think, with the square to Neptune to like speak less, listen more.
Yeah.
And where you're realizing that because your beliefs are changing, there in turn also the way that you communicate with others is changing.
Yeah.
There can definitely like be more opportunities to reflect. So I think like journaling could be really great for you. You could also really benefit from meditation, so that way you're not like letting your mouth kind of run away with itself when dealing with other people.
Yeah.
And because Mars rules your first house of your body and the 8th house of transformation and other people, one thing I would say is like you're changing the way that you think about yourself. So there's some transformation of the mind, the physical body, the appearance. You're rewiring where you're putting your energy and your vitality, and you're like learning to like walk away from some arguments because it just doesn't serve you. So it's also about how you manage like your anger or frustration.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting things in regards to like sex and sexuality, because it rules the 8th house as well, and getting more so turned on by the mind and stimulated by like communication rather than like physical actions. I would say like obviously, you know, not a time possibly to be buying a vehicle because there might be some things that you overlook that you don't see, or like maybe even water damage, or there can be some things that kind of fall through the cracks in terms of like moving or signing leases or renting. I would really recommend also like not a time to be doing any surgical procedures because Mars rules surgery or cutting.
Or at least don't rush through these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you're like cutting somebody off as well, you know, hopefully not in traffic, but like cutting off like a sibling, or like choosing to take space from like, you know, some kind of heated interaction that you're having with a family member, or like even a neighbor. And later in Scorpio season, we'll see Mars in conjunct or quincunx planets in Scorpio. So it's going to represent this need to like really let something go, or like let something die off, so it can be reborn. And then down the road, when we have planets go into Sag, you know, it'll oppose your 3rd house in square Neptune. So it's like a lot of like possibly going back and learning something, reviewing documents, reviewing languages,
It's
anything.
like if you're learning a language, then the Sun in Sag is when you're showing other people how you've mastered what you're learning, you know?
Yeah.
And completing that. So definitely changing the way you feel comfortable or break out your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Express yourself. Some of you may talk to neighbors for the first time and like feel assertive to expand more in your community.
Anything else?
Yeah, the trine to Saturn, I think, is also gonna like strengthen where their ideas will meet with real, you know, strong influences that can take those ideas and bring it together. Like an idea you have could be shared by someone to thousands, and it strengthens your connection to like minds.
Great for networking. Also, like if you're somebody who's wanting to start an online business, or you're wanting to teach a course, or maybe you want to write a book, or you want to learn a language, like these things are going to take more time. So I think with Mars going retrograde, it's taking that time. Like if you go on a trip, take a book, take something like a laptop or a tablet, something that you can like be writing with, because it's going to give you the opportunity to like go back to these things, rework these things. And with the trines to Saturn, your goals and how you're communicating and connecting with other people, especially networks or some of your friends. I think that's probably like the best aspect. Like we'll see a Mars trine Saturn before it turns retrograde as well. And that'll be in mid-October. So during Libra season, you're going to see kind of glimmers of that, and where collaborating with other people is really going to help you get a little bit further. Do you have any like don'ts for them during this retrograde?
Yeah, don't. The square to Neptune will be an unconscious sense of wanting to say something, but knowing that you may not be able to put it into words the way you want it to be put without it being taken the wrong way, or just without it being misunderstood, and don't hold yourself back. Like, you still want to express it anyway. I'm saying that too because it might instigate some drama and conflict. And if Aries is gonna shoot the shit, or if Aries is gonna like start and initiate that, I think it'd be better for it to be you than it to happen to you. So I would say don't hold your tongue and don't hold back. If at least what you're saying is the truth.
It's also about like your action and your motivation, and like when you say you're going to do something with Mars in your third house, the square to Neptune is like, you can't bitch out. You can't hide. You can't check out. Like, there needs to be a sense of you really making sure that your actions have a sense of direction and faith. And also clarity, honesty. I think Neptune squares, especially with a planet that deals with a sign that deals with communication, can be a lot of like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then you don't, right? Yeah, so watch for falsehoods and miscommunications and those kinds of things. We're going to pause for just a second because I have to edit this so that way he can cut this up, because I just realized I didn't make this whole sign.
Gotcha.
Whole house. Okay. Cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so now we can take it through all the rising signs. Okay, so for Taurus and Taurus rising, this is going to be the Mars retrograde in Gemini that is going to be happening for a number of months at the end of this year into the new year, and it's going retrograde in your second house of income.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's something to look forward to. Gemini is your affinity because it rules your house. So the North Node changed the destiny around the mechanisms of how and what you manifest. Then we had the 2 Gemini seasons with the sun that's solar powered, your awareness of new ideas with the new moon to make money and to have a much more conscious understanding of your value. And Mars is not only you acting on that to get paid and to make money and to increase your finances and to change how you approach your finances, but it is trining Saturn in the 10th. And so Saturn's final round in your 10th house, that is putting the cement towards the career success. Like, any limitations Taurus risings that Taurus has in career is more so like a business that's finishing its construction, and once that construction is built, it's gonna open up to so much more patronage. But Mars that's trining this is gonna have you start to liquidate all of this success you've been working towards since 2020, and it's gonna feel really good because that Martian assertiveness will add a lot of confidence to this commanding of your finances. And the retrograde is going to help you actually now reevaluate what you do with this excess of cash. In the case, though, some of you, this will be huge financial loss. And based on how you overcome that loss, it'll make way for more returns. So either way, this Mars transit is going to get you paid. It's going to put a lot of money in your pocket.
It's interesting because like retrogrades, they bring up karmic situations. Like if something's meant to come back to you, like if somebody owes you money, especially because Mars rules your 7th house, if you know a business partner owes you a cut of something that pays off, like the retrograde may actually be pretty positive, especially because it's going to be an aspect via trine to Saturn in your 10th. So I could see like a rethinking what you do with your assets and how you're spending money, so that way you can kind of have more strength when it comes to like long-term financial career goals. I think the other side of this is that, you know, Taurus risings really need to be careful because Mars in the 2nd house, like it'll burn a hole in your pocket. So it's just spend. And then when Mars turns retrograde, it loses its momentum. So it can feel like you're losing one of 2 incomes. If you had like 2 incomes coming in, it's like something scales back, you lose a client, you lose, you know, a side hustle, whatever. But it's also time to like restructure and rethink about what your values are, like where you're putting your money, how much money you're spending on food, how much money you're spending on travel, And it can really strengthen your, through a loss, it can strengthen your ability to think more about, okay, what do I value? Where am I spending money? Where can I cut back? And I think you're doing that because of long-term goals with your career. So many of you guys are like, do I take the paying job, or do I take a couple months off, and do I build my own business? And is it going to work? And also, Mars rules your 7th house of relationships. I mean, I'm looking at the fact that, you know, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. We've got Mercury, the Sun, Venus, and the South Node in the 7th house. So if you have a business partner, if you have a marital partner, that person may say to you, like, I can't work for a period of time. I'm going through a crisis. I need some time off. You need to figure this out. And you're going to be like, okay, how do we reorganize this? And how do we scale back on some expenses so we can be able to swing it? So you might want to be prepared for that.
I see the 11th house as gross income, rewards from career, and then the 2nd house is net income. So with the square to Jupiter, you may find that for some of you with companies or maybe the amount of money your work produces literally expands. And so because your gross income has evolved to the next level, your net income does. And that's like restructuring, just like she said, how you switching from one type of income to another too.
Especially like, I'm going to keep saying documents, conversations, like with others. And also Mars rules your 12th house, which is what you don't see. And in the sign of Aries, it's more you. It's like your instinctual drive. So you might be saying, I have some hesitation about how much money we're spending. Let's scale back, or let's move it here, or let's, you know, do that. Just be careful when it comes to like financial exchanges with others, because there can be some letdown with the South Node eclipse going on there. But by the same token, if you're in the business where you have clients, I could see that many clients from the past are coming back to you, and they're like, hey, I'll pay you. Can we work together? You probably want to get these financial contractual agreements in writing. It's really important that you do that.
That's actually happened to me since Mars went into Gemini. Someone who I haven't heard from a long time started watching my lives and purchased something. And then someone who I haven't talked to in a while wants to do a podcast thing with me. And I was thinking I probably should do some kind of proper paperwork, or like...
Yeah, and it's like, fuck you, pay me energy.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't want to just like rush into work with people right now, because
that's right. That's right. You stay here. We take good care of Mike.
Yeah. No, it's interesting though, because a lot of this can come in fast, where like people want to work and be like, oh, let's do this, and I didn't realize it's very Gemini.
It's very scattered. Yeah, Mars and Gemini is like jack of all trades. But what people are learning through the retrograde is like just throwing things at a wall to see what sticks. It's not the best use of your energy. And you might realize that working with some people may not actually pay off. By the same token, some people might come back, and I would say, if you're somebody who owns a business and you have like invoices that haven't been paid but people want services, I would be like, and here's what you owe me, to make sure and ensure that you're reworking the relationship that you have with others and money and exchange, so there's nothing that's hidden, nothing that kind of goes, you know, I guess outside of the radar. I mean, but I don't want to make it sound super doom and gloom. I just think that it's really important that you're cautious with who you invest your time, yourself, and your energy with. Yeah. And be careful whose advice you buy, because of the squares to Neptune in your 11th house. You might have friends that want to work with you, and you're like,
Right. Like, they'll see what you're doing from the outside looking in, but that doesn't mean they know what you're doing. So just take their advice with a grain of salt, and make sure you don't doubt your actions. Don't doubt your confidence, because this is meant to raise your self-esteem.
Yeah. And also ultimately give you more spending power in the end. You know, you can work with 5 separate people, but if the energy's scattered and nobody has their shit together and not everybody is as committed to like building something, it makes sense to scale back and choose 1 or 2 people that you know are going to be reliable, or nobody, and do it yourself.
Yep. Wants you to work smarter than you work hard.
Yeah. Let's take it to Gemini. Gemini rising. Mars retrograde in your 1st house, throwing fists, throwing words. I don't know. I think all the mutable signs are going to be challenged by this, especially I think like Gemini, Virgos. I mean, all of them, Virgo, Sag, but Mars on your ascendant, like you want to get as much done until the end of October as physically possible. Like if you want to get in shape, if you want to set out a certain sense of like goals and desires and things that you want to do, like plan it out, write it out, get it going prior to the retrograde, because once Mars goes retrograde in your sign, you're going to probably lose steam and probably lose some momentum, right?
Which sucks because I can already feel it coming out the 12th. So it's a little sluggish, but yeah, and a lot of that momentum will change because Jupiter is squaring your 10th. And this is going to change the way you take yourself serious. It's going to change the way you assert yourself, because possibilities, opportunities, and your entire livelihood and career is opening up. The dream life is being made real. And I feel like Jupiter on Neptune will complete making possible things that weren't possible. For example, if before this you didn't think it was possible to work with your favorite artist, and then that goes back and they reach you, now you're changing the way you look at yourself because you have expanded the opportunities you can step in. But I'm curious about the quincunx to Pluto, because I think that's going to really transform the way a lot of Geminis approach sex and how intimately they break through the cap walls that many of us build. And that'll be really interesting because Scorpio is still transforming the behavior of Gemini risings. So we're gonna see a lot of Geminis going through like new character arcs. It would be interesting to see certain Geminis maybe take a 180 or completely change up their stance towards certain things, or their direction towards how they approach certain things, even if they keep the same philosophy. So definitely a sign to look out for, because there's a lot of unpredictability with that. Uranus in the 12th.
The South Node being ruled by Mars. And then later in Scorpio season, we'll see a yod. So we'll see sextiles from Scorpio to Capricorn forming a yod with Mars retrograde. You got South Node eclipses in your 6th house. So it's like, what bad habits are you getting rid of? What are you releasing? Especially if they are issues with diet, fitness, sexual health, habits, sexual patterns. So I think the sextile to Pluto and the quincunx to the ascendant is like, what are you doing with your sexual energy? What are you putting it into? How can you make it work for you, right? Are you having healthy sexual relationships? Do you need to deal with health issues? Is there a need to be more physically active? It sounds ironic, but it's like, I think the retrograde, even though you're going to lose a little bit of momentum, it's going to give you the opportunity to really say, okay, how am I working my daily routine? You know, how am I responsible for achieving my goals? If things aren't coming to fruition, where do I need to regroup and kind of like rethink how I'm spending my time, who I'm spending my time with, who my friends are. I could see some like friend fallout because it's the ruler of the 11th and you can get into some beefs with some friends. And Mars square Neptune in your 10th house is also saying that you're really pushing to achieve a dream in your career, but you want to make sure that you're not, you know, going in the wrong direction, or you're not buying into things that are too good to be true, or you're not chasing a dream that may not ultimately produce something real. Because, and then in Sag season, you're going to see that there's going to be conflict where you're going to have partners saying like, you know, you're complaining that you're not making things happen, but you're not taking initiative, and you're going to have some friction with other people, especially like your philosophies, you know, on life and stuff like that. The Mars trine Saturn is wonderful if you want to study, travel, learn, if you want to collaborate with groups of people, travel with friends. I mean, I think it's also about kind of saying, like, it's time to walk the walk and talk the talk. If you say you believe in something, if you say that you're well-versed in something, if you know something, then you need to be working collectively with groups, and you need to be inspiring other people.
And adding depth to what you know, I think it's going to bring more... It's going to bring more layers to certain things mastered, open up a whole new chapter with Saturn in the 9th that will add more strength to embodying what you believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, look forward to changing the way you express yourself due to an entire transformation of your lifestyle and behavior.
Yeah.
With new Gemini coming too.
Excited to see how that pans out. Let's take it to Cancer rising.
Shout out to Johnny Depp.
Cancer rising, Mars retrograde in your 12th house.
I'm officially a 0-degree progressed Cancer rising, by the way.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you cry yourself to sleep at night?
I would say I'm a little bit more introspective. I think it just made me more empathic, but my Cap Moon isn't a fan. It's like, oh, I feel y'all more. Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, Mars rules your 10th house of career in Aries. It rules your 5th house of creativity and romance and children. Cancer. I think Mars retrograde is giving you an extended period of rest and recuperation. I think it's also where you're dealing with internal frustrations and...
That's why I'm feeling lethargic, because of the progress.
Yeah. And I think with Mars being the ruler of your 10th, you're like looking for a space that you can work or create from, or you're looking for inspiration, or you feel like you need to kind of like recharge before you can get back in action with some of your career things. So a lot of you guys are probably looking for offices, places, people to help you. You're strategizing possibly, behind the scenes in terms of like what your vision is going to be, or your action plan when it comes to your career, because Mars rules your 10th. Now Jupiter's going retrograde there as well. Jupiter will come back in the new year. There's some really big things happening for Cancer risings, and I don't know. This is an interesting one because it's gonna feel like hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Mars in the 12th.
It's definitely a huge fundamental change of certain beliefs spiritually that will help you overcome doubt. I think the way this will happen is every single doubt, because Mars in Gemini in the tarot is the 9 of Swords, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Jupiter is the 8. So every single doubt, all the anxiety that you had, Mars unconscious to you is going to bring it up. And everything that you believed you couldn't do, you're going to do. And it's going to uplift you out of that doubt. But that square to Jupiter in the 9th is, I always like Cancer with Pisces in the 9th, because that's like seeing the unseen. It's like the philosophy of metaphysics. So it's expanding more of this metaphysical wisdom that will bring light to what's unconscious to you. So if anything, a lot of the change that happens to Cancer might be hidden and internal, but it's going to set the stage towards changing your whole life. And I love how you brought looking up for offices and setting a new stage for work. We also have to keep in mind with Chiron in your 10th and Jupiter will be coming back into your 10th. Even when Jupiter's direct, it's preparing you, like Gemini, to step into powerful career success and to take actions that will catapult you into literally the next level of your career. But that's gonna come after you take the actions to change your beliefs and the unconscious habits through your thoughts and the anxiety that you're not aware that gets in your way, that Mars will make you very aware of through challenges. I'm
also just taking into consideration all those planets in the 5th ruled by Mars, Scorpio. I could see some people that are having lots of psychological challenges in regards to changes with your love life, with the eclipses, the South Node eclipses in your 5th. So if you're going through a turbulent time in a romantic relationship, if you're ending a relationship, if you just found out you're pregnant, if you're going through a breakup, I think Mars being retrograde in your 12th is just how you process and you deal with this new change. On the flip side, the trine to Saturn tells me it's really great to get in touch with anger and maybe looking at therapy or maybe looking at yoga or anything that's going to help you process any anger or resentment in a psychological or in a spiritual way, so that way you can make magic happen. I mean, Mars in the 12th is like a spiritual warrior, and maybe it's what you do with some of those frustrations. Or on the flip side, because of that Mars square Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces in the 9th, maybe you feel like you need to go to a foreign place, you need to go to a retreat, maybe you need to go to like a private workshop or a class, or you need a mentorship or something to develop your talents behind the scenes and to kind of get back in touch with your creativity and find inspiration.
I like that. Yeah, finding inspiration. It may come from unlikely sources out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also great for like bed pleasures. I mean, I think of like Mars in the 12th house, ruler of the 5th, like extended vacations, meeting a
Sneaky
foreigner.
links.
Yeah, like lots of opportunities for just like sex and changeability with partners. And maybe it's like adapting to new partners if you are going through changes in your love life. Okay. So now we've got Leo and Leo rising. Mars retrograde through Gemini in your natal 11th house.
Yep. Well, we know Leos have been getting targeted left and right. Rest in peace, Teddy Ray with the Scorpio moon, who mysteriously died in his pool.
Oh no.
Yeah, Leo sad. It don't stop. So I definitely want to focus on Saturn in the 7th, because for Leo risings, this sets up marriage, business partnerships, divorces. The standards of your relationships have been very much a point of focus, and how you are structuring the room to harness and anchor partnerships with people that draw you forward, increase the quality of knowledge you share with them. And so Mars, that connects in the 11th, will have you act forward on friendships that move these partnerships forward. It's like you could have for years been planning with somebody, hey, let's do a podcast, or let's start a show. And you've been coming up with ideas, and I think Mars and Gemini is when you finally put that together. You and that partner start to connect with people in your community that can bring that vision to reality. The entourage spot for sure.
I get a little like, I maybe it's just me, I see it differently. I have a lot of Leo risings in my life, and I think Mars retrograde is bringing something back. It can slow things down, but it can bring people back.
Yeah.
So if we look
Old
at
friends, yeah.
the Saturn-Uranus square happening between Uranus in your 10th house and Saturn in your 7th, if you are going through a breakup, if you are going through strife in a relationship, if you're going through a divorce or whatever, I think the trine for Mars retrograde in your 11th to Saturn in your 7th is like the friends who come in that are like, fuck that person. And you might realize that like good friends are hard to come by, and that it's really important to have friends in crisis. So if you have dipped out or whatever, if you've been like lost in a sea of relationship drama, people can come back and they can be like encouraging you and motivating you to like move on.
Yeah.
Right?
And Mars retrograde, like you alluded to, I think like anyone you had a falling out or misunderstanding with will bring the opportunity to bring that back. But if you can't mediate the Neptune in the 8th that brought up these issues, Mars is going to confront that. So you can have friends come back only to fall out with them more because of some stubbornness or disagreement, or you can break through that and see through the deception. So yeah.
Mars rules your 4th house of home and family, and it also rules your 9th house of like what you're learning, what you believe in. So I think Mars in the 11th square Jupiter Neptune is if you are going through a crisis, friends can give you really good advice, and they can kind of help you, and they can come back. So if you are meant to reconnect with certain friends who can help you through some of these challenges, that's kind of the point. Mars is also, the 11th house deals with the lover of your lovers. So if you are having relationship issues, I would say watch out, because you can find out through social media or whatever that, there's interfering third parties that are going on, talking to a significant other, creating some problems. Your friends might be like the ones to call it out and be like, yo, I saw so-and-so at the club with your dude. And best believe like the Mars retrograde, even in spite of the Neptune square, and people may be deceived or try to deceive, it's going to have all the fucking receipts. And it's going to be like, here's the screenshot, here's the picture.
Especially during Virgo season.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And then the king comes to Pluto in your 6th. You're going to start to see how the actions you're taking with, the true people in your life, the true friends. Your behavior, you'll start to see the effects of how your transformation of your lifestyle since 2008 is influencing the friends you can have in your life with Saturn that's anchoring these boundaries. So for some of you, Pluto going through your 6th, you don't smoke anymore, right? Where you used to. And Mars retrograde will bring back people who might smoke, or may bring back people who might tempt you. And now you maintaining this change in your behavior will test how you kind of like.
It's definitely about habits and patterns. And I think like Pluto and Capricorn in your 6th is about, you know, the ability to really, I don't know, like hold the line with like health and wellness and habits. And perhaps maybe you've got some people from the past coming back who want to go out and they want to rage and party, and you're like, I got work in the morning, I got to go to the gym tonight. Like, so yeah, you might be tempted a little bit back into some bad habits. All right, let's take it to Virgo rising. So for Virgo and Virgo rising, you've got Mars going retrograde in Gemini through your 10th house of career. I look at Gemini rising charts and I'm like, oh man.
Virgo rising?
I mean, Virgo rising, excuse me. Virgo rising.
I like how the North Node really changed the direction for career for a lot of people in Virgo. And then the Saturn is establishing like the work environment or the livelihood to maintain this career. So I would say 2020 up until now for Virgo risings was setting up the stage for them to really break through in their career, like create the idea, create the space to build towards it. And I think Mars in Gemini now is finally acting off on it and making it more real than ever. So a lot of career breakthrough, but you have to make sure that well-meaning intentions or duplicitous intentions from people in your relationships don't get in your way, because someone can give you great advice that unintentionally misleads you because their vision for what you're doing is not your vision for what you're doing. So you want to make sure you're on the same page and that what you want is what other people want.
I think just being a Virgo rising with a Gemini midheaven, you can wear more than one hat, whether that's you have a job and you have a side hustle, or you have a couple different titles, or you can do it all at work. I think for those of you guys who feel like you've been kind of like in Groundhog's Day with your career and you're just kind of showing up and doing the work, but you don't feel passionate or inspired, or you don't see room for growth, the Mars retrograde is definitely a time where you can make a change, right? You can, segue from one position to another. You can go back to an old job. You can say, you know what, I need to focus more on my relationships. My partner needs me more. I'm going to take a step back because of the squares to Jupiter and Neptune. Mars rules your 8th house of joint resources and your 3rd house of communication. And I feel like if you're showing up with Mars trine Saturn in Aquarius and you're doing all the role and the responsibility of being a boss or a manager, then you need to speak up and make sure that you're getting paid as such, and that people are compensating you for the amount of work that you're doing. Otherwise, this retrograde can be a wonderful time to start reorganizing and reorienting and saying, am I just going through the motion of I've been at the same job for 5 years with no shift, with no change, and where your passion for where you're going in terms of your career is changing. I think Saturn in your 6th is really getting your attention through your health and also like breakdowns and issues within your co-working space. And you've been, adapting, learning new things, bringing in new systems, possibly learning new software, all kinds of stuff. And maybe there's this realization that, you do want to go back to school, or you do want to get a new certification, or you do want to get into something different. And that Mars retrograde is where you rework the way that you look at the kind of work that you're doing. And it's going to be challenging. I'm not going to candy coat it. It's going to square your placements in Virgo. Sag season, it's going to oppose your 4th house. It's going to square Jupiter and Neptune, slightly Jupiter in your 7th. So biting off what Mike said, just with advice that you get from people who tell you what you should be doing or what you could be doing, some of these people may have like grandiose ideas that they're not ideal. They're not actually going to stick, and it's what somebody else wants you to be.
Right. Like, let's say you start a new coffee shop, and it's good for an independent coffee shop. You've been building it since Saturn's Aquarius. Then Jupiter goes in your 7th, and now that it's retrograded back, you meet like a multimillionaire who's in love with you and like completely brings $1 million to expand your coffee shop. But they feel like you would be better off in New York, but you're in California. So it's like they have this expansion, but you feel like it would be better in California. So this is where it's like, how do you mediate that compromise? Because it can work out, but that's where it could clash.
There can also be a compromise for figuring out ways of being able to work remotely, because Mars rules your third. Or I could see like relocation. So on one hand, you could be partnering with new people and taking jobs in other places. On the other hand, work is just so busy. I don't think it's a matter of, am I going to work? Many people will either go back to work or they'll have several offers. But with the squares to your 7th house, partners are going to be like, where are you? I need you. Are you here? I'm not getting what I need. And definitely a need to like rethink joint resources. If you're a sole provider and you're just working your ass off and your partner's saying they need you more, but they're not contributing, you'll have to have a conversation and be like, look, you know, there is a trade-off. If you're not working and I'm the one working 24/7, but you want me around, you can't have it both ways. So there might be a meeting of the minds that kind of come about from that in terms of just what you guys are doing with your resources and also how much money realistically you could make. Like you don't want to be in positions where people are dangling a carrot over your head. Mars rules your third. Get it in writing. If you're somebody who's interested in writing, blogging, media, stuff like that, you may opt to start a second side hustle that you're going to do on the side before we get into the new year. And Mars trines Saturn again, and you feel like, you know what, now I can make that segue work-wise.
And the rulership of Mars to your 8th will, in its connection to self-employment, open up, you know, avenues for those of you who want to create your own business or strengthen your own independent business already.
I think that's also the quincunx to Pluto in the 5th. You know, many of you guys would benefit from having an online store or a business or an account or something that is going to generate income.
Even if you're still working at a job part-time.
Yeah. All right. Good luck, Virgo. We've got Libra and Libra rising. Mars retrograde in the 9th house in Gemini. I want your take because that's my rising sign before I say anything, because I'm going to have this optimistic spin on it, you know?
Right. Honestly, I'm looking at Jupiter because coming out of the 6th is finishing, you know, since 2017, that 6-year evolution of your personality. And so that's a very it's a very crucial period where you're completely, and I'm very excited for Libra risings because this is going to be the climax point where your very lifestyle, livelihood, the way you live your life, the way you make your money with your lifestyle is literally evolving to the next level. Like you are creating the dream life more than ever. It's vivid. And I think Mars in Gemini is, now that you see how much more your life is your dream life, it's going to fundamentally change your approach, your philosophical approach to the ideas you think about how you live your life and what you show others assertively is possible and what you achieve. Because all this is going to crescendo into the 10th house Mars transit that will have you take this change of philosophy and apply it to your career and break through considerably. So I feel like Mars is more important and it's square to the 6th house for you and for Libra risings. And I can only imagine what that'll look like, especially coming into Sagittarius season, where that'll start to give you a visual image of what that's starting to look like too. So a lot of breakthrough.
Mars rules your 2nd house of your money, and you've got eclipses going through your 2nd house with the South Node. And Mars also rules your relationship. So with all Mars things, it's passion, devotion, moving forward, sex, you know, making money, or it's going to be fighting and having issues. So I think, you know, it helps that it's in a sister sign. So whether you're a Libra, Sun, Moon, or Rising, you're going to have aspects there. But did you just mix a beer with a margarita?
I want to see how it tastes.
It's all going to the same place anyway, right? I mean, now it's like really Mexican because it's like a margarita with a beer.
That's nice out the glass.
Yeah, Mars rules relationships. And so I guess let's start with the positive and then I'll give you the other take that I have.
Okay.
Mars in the 9th is, the bigger picture in life. It's a good luck house. It does deal with where you're going, what your beliefs are, what your philosophy is. And in the 9th, I think it's really wonderful because you're motivating other people possibly, but you're also rethinking relationships and how you communicate your dream life with your partner. Ninth house is planning trips. So, you know, just from one Libra rising to another, I was really set on like going to Greece this year. And I was like, I want to do this. And then the more that I looked at the Mars retrograde, the square Neptune, I was like, it's just not going to work schedule wise for me. So I've decided to take the Mars retrograde to like learn more about, is that where I want to go? Let's learn about the language, the place, all of that stuff, rethink that. And also I'm like going back to teaching astrology courses again and teaching another course. And I was going to launch it in 2022. And I was like, it's got to go out in the new year. So I'm already seeing the effects of it. Go ahead.
I want to say the ninth house is teaching. So I love that you brought up teaching courses, because I think a lot of what y'all teach, I think a lot of what y'all will be teaching directly or indirectly is, whether you say it or not, it's like, I changed my fucking life. So like, here's how I did it, you know? Even if you're not teaching it directly, it's going to be really great for the people who you're at. I think this transit will be better for people who you're with, because it's like you're going to teach those people through what you're going through. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how teaching is innovated, and Saturn in the 5th takes what you're learning and strengthening those talents to express more assertively, philosophically. And I feel like Aries rising, it'll be also very debated, a lot of arguments, but more in an intellectual way. I
could see like a lot of like, intellectual or like philosophical arguments, like not seeing eye to eye with other people in terms of your beliefs with the squares to Jupiter. But the trines to Saturn are also saying like where you're expressing what you want your life to be with other people or with your partner to better kind of round out creative projects or what's going to make you happy. And 5th house can be vacation. So, you know, perhaps maybe you're rethinking, okay, well, where do we want to go? How are we going to go there? What's the timing? What does it look like? So if you're thinking about that, cool. You'd be thinking about going back to school, completing a degree. If you're going on long trips or anything, take an iPad, you know, take a book with you, something that you can read, you can journal if you're traveling in faraway places. Travel may not go so well with squares to Neptune. You know, you could get sick, there could be scheduling issues. There can also be just like issues with health and dietary stuff while traveling, and like the effect that it has on your schedule, especially with Jupiter retrograde back into your 6th. You may feel like you've made so many health changes that like it would really interfere with your schedule. And I think that the quincunx to Pluto is also, I mean, the 9th house is 3rd to your 7th. So a partner might be talking about wanting to move and they might change their mind. And you're trying to kind of strategize, you know, what it is that you want your home life to kind of be like. And am I missing anything? Watch out for legal stuff, legal documents, paperwork. You know, if you're a Libra rising going through a separation or a divorce, it could take longer because it rules your 7th house, and there can be arguments over legal documents and marital agreements that can be happening there as well.
Yeah, especially with Jupiter getting ready to go back, like you said.
Yeah. A lot of Libra risings anticipated that Jupiter in the 7th was going to be like, woo, it was going to be positive. And it can be, but like
Until Pluto gets out. Okay.
Mars in Gemini wants smoke. And when it's squaring Jupiter, that's 12th house to your 7th, you can have it out with people. And there can definitely be issues legally pertaining to relationships or even like injuries on the job. That's something else. But legal issues can be a thing because it's highlighting your 9th house lord. So just take that into consideration. All right, Scorpio rising. Mars retrograde in Gemini in your 8th house.
Messy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying the other day. I was like, fuck. Well, at least Mars is in the 8th house, so I'll give you that. And you know, same with Aries, Scorpio rising. You're gonna feel this very strongly because Mars is your chart ruler. Oh boy, what do you think about this?
Well, I think the most important thing we have to establish is we know that the eclipse in your 7th house is establishing a lifetime let's just say, once again, establishment of key relationships and partnerships that for the next 10, 20 years, but I think the rest of your life will be significant before and after, right? So we know the 8th house is the result of partnerships. So this Mars transit is making the necessary snips with your psychoanalysis and psychology and ability to psychoanalyze others, because Mars is your approach towards dealing with others. I don't know why I feel like you'll just be noticing subconscious to other people habitual patterns that will let you know, I cannot trust this person, or I can trust this person. And this will be very made evident Sagittarius season in your 2nd house, where you're seeing the ascended value of your worth. You're seeing how the relationships you've manifested increase your value. And so Mars in the 8th will let you know who you can trust with this extra value. So it's kind of like with Virgo. It's like, okay, maybe your partnership has gotten you so much more wealth, and you liquidate that November, December. And now Mars in your 8th is like, okay, who can I trust with this extra wealth? Who should I even let into this fold? How do I deal more brilliantly with other people relative to this information? Because with Saturn in the 4th as well, and the way you're, autonomous, working from home, or strengthening your own home space, this will give you more of a cosmic foundation and outreach to the right people. So people who you can trust, you can, similar to Gemini, I feel you'll be a lot more deeply intimate with. You might break through in sharing more vulnerable thoughts with the right people that will help you explore more your sexuality too.
Yeah, and I think, the Mars retrograde, very similar to Taurus, you're going to see lots of changes that's going on with your partner's money, because the 8th house is the 2nd to your 7th. So Mars going retrograde in your 8th can be that somebody says, I can't pay you, or I need a surgery, I can't work, or I'm mentally too stressed, like I can't handle this. So there's going to be a lot of reworking joint resources. Documents pertaining to taxes, like that's something like you actually want to start getting your tax stuff in order during the retrograde. So come the new year, if you're in a new tax situation, if you've made more money, if you've opened a business, if you have a business partnership, if you work with your spouse, any of these things, you have to reorganize and figure out the taxes and what's going to make most sense in terms of, paying off. I think it's also a wonderful time to be looking at debt and realistically coming up with a plan to be able to tackle debt, and just how you're looking at joint resources and intimacy. Mars going retrograde in your 8th can also be just like changes in your sex life. Like you might notice that a partner has like a slowdown in their sex drive. Not a time to get surgeries with Mars retrograde in your 8th. And I'm looking at,
vasectomies.
Mars trining Saturn in the 4th. Like that could be that there is an inheritance, somebody in the family transitions, or there's a passing of property to you, and then you're like, now what do we do with this money?
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel too. So like, if we equate, and it doesn't have to be limited to this, but if we equate the 3rd house of skills and Pluto in your 8th, awakening at the final level, your skills, right? Let's say before you had to apply your investigative, psychologically, psychoanalytical personality towards how you'll notice bodily cues from people. So maybe it took you like 5 days to get to know who someone is, but now Pluto in your 3rd has mastered your ability to read tarot or read body language. So now with Mars and Gemini, whereas it took you 5 days to get to know who someone is, it takes you like an hour or a minute. And so it's transforming the way you deal with people and apply this, similar to Leo, how their behavior changed their friendships. Your skills and attitudes are transforming your approach towards other people too. And it's subtle, and it's going to be very liberating because you can do so much more by doing less.
I actually kind of like Mars in the 8th square Jupiter, because Jupiter is the 2nd house lord. So it makes me feel like there's a lot of opportunity to make a lot of money, and something that you invested in pays off, and then you're trying to figure out what you do with it.
Yeah.
The Mars square Neptune, I think, is a lot of possible conflict with other people about your love life and what makes you happy, and how much money you spend on pleasure and playtime and recreation. And I also think that there can be conflicts in terms of conversations and communication about children, and whether or not somebody feels psychologically open or ready or financially ready to be able to facilitate that. But the trines that you're getting from all that Scorpio to the 5th house is if you're willing to change and transform, that it can be a positive change, or you might realize you're in love with someone. But keep in mind the return of Saturn-Uranus squares happening. So Saturn in your 4th house of home, Uranus in your 7th house. You're going to have people suddenly drop into your life, or relationships suddenly come in, or they suddenly change, which affects your home life. So there's a lot of pieces here for Scorpio rising, and I would say, you want to stay open to changing and transforming the way that you think and talk about home and family to appease Uranus in the 7th house and make it possible to totally innovate your relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
All right. Sagittarius rising. Mars retrograde in your 7th.
I like to call that the truth blaster.
Oh boy.
He's sharing the truth of your vision. This, I think, is going to be very instrumental and magical in changing considerably your approach towards other people. And I like to think of Saturn in your 3rd, like you gaining a master's degree. It's like the 2.5 years that you might have taken since 2020 to gain a master's. Now Mars is in Gemini, and everything you've learned, you're literally applying to other people. So let's say you spent 2 years learning a psychology degree. Now you're taking everything you've learned about psychology and you're acting off of it on other people. And it's going to show you throughout this period how what you've learned strengthens your ability to apply to others. And that square to Jupiter in your 4th is going to expand the comfort zone with which you are more free to express yourself towards other people.
Because of the connection to the 5th?
Yeah, especially. So
I'm not wild about the fact that the South Node's going through your 12th.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's changing your lifestyle like Gemini, but in a much more nebulous and hidden way that will be very misunderstood other people.
I mean, a Mars retrograde, I'm indifferent. I've seen it play out a million different ways. Mars rules your 5th of true love. So Mars going retrograde in your 7th, and Gemini is a double-bodied sign, it can suggest that there is like a switching of relationships. And if a relationship's not working, then Mars going retrograde would be the time to undo it. If you're committed to the relationship, you have to understand that you're going to see sides of your partner, because it rules the 12th house, that you are not aware of. Some of your relationships, some of your friends, even your siblings, you might realize they're kind of like your enemies. And there can be people that are interfering in your relationships, like a third party that would come out of the blue. Mars ruling the 5th of true love, retrograde in the 7th. If something comes back to you, it could be meant to be. But I'm not wild about the square to Jupiter and Neptune, because it tells me some people might find that they're ready for the next partnership, but they're living with one person and it's not working. And there can be deception. There can be deception on other people's part. There can be deception in regards to other lovers. So if you have other lovers or romantic interests that come in, it can cause a lot of quarrels in current relationships. And definitely you're one of the placements with Mars retrograde through your 7th that you will probably hear from people from the past, especially because the 4th house is the past. Yeah. So the square is like, it could be a current relationship is reminding you of something that you've gone through in the past, and you get triggered and you go into a spiral with the eclipses in your 12th. But I mean, I've seen Mars go, when Mars went retrograde through my 7th house, it squared a bunch of stuff in my 4th house a couple of years ago, and I remember just being like, fuck, this is going to be a shit show. And like, I ended up like reconnecting with my husband, and it did manifest as big changes in my living situation with the squares to the 4th, and it ended up actually being really positive because it cut and severed a lot of like old things for me. But I think the mutable squares is saying relationships have to change, you have to change, you have to let go of your fears and insecurities, and you have to be willing to open up emotionally and within the home to find the balance between you and others and really letting go of past trauma.
And after this clears, Jupiter will go in your 5th while Mars goes direct in your 7th. So perfect for entering new relationships or a whole new theme to existing partnerships.
Falling in love.
Yeah.
I mean, Jupiter in your 5th is going to be like mini Sag risings are going to get pregnant. And I think the Mars retrograde is like, are we doing this or not because I want to have a kid, or I'm in love with you, or pick them or me. Like there's some messiness with, I think, the square and also Jupiter, and you have to be careful with like what you're keeping hidden or private. That's definitely something that can kind of pan out. But Mars in the 7th can motivate you. You can meet people who are just pushing you to evolve and change, and it might be uncomfortable what they're saying. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to talk about it. You can't hide out, which gives you the opportunity, I think, to kind of rise to the occasion and realize that relationships take work. With trines to Saturn in your 3rd, it all requires you to communicate. You have to communicate. It's important if you're having frustrations to not just check out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true.
Also it's about money because of the Mars quincunx Pluto.
Nice.
So it's money stuff too.
And how it transforms your partnerships.
Capricorn and Capricorn rising, Mars retrograde through your 6th house.
So I like to see this as changing your life. It doesn't have to be multitasking, but it's like you've structured your finances, you've structured your network, which is what I love about the Earth risings, because it's so good for money. And Saturn in your 2nd house has been strengthening your network so that you can strengthen your net worth. And now Mars in your 6th is the actions taken to integrate the quality of your finances into your routine. And you want to see the 6th house as the actions with Mars you're taking to take what you're worth and to create the lifestyle aligned with brilliant ideas in Gemini so that you can support this and really set the stage for when Jupiter will eventually go through Taurus and Gemini and evolve the actions you've taken. So this is gonna, similar to Cancer that's gonna confront unconscious habits, this is gonna confront a lot of distractions in your lifestyle, health issues that need to be, tackled, especially around mental issues that get in the way of you having a good lifestyle. And any challenges that come through, you're gonna break through. And this is where the awakening of you with Pluto in your 1st is fundamentally transforming your behavior. So I see this as you transforming other people's behavior by you being transformed reflexively. So I think it's gonna be very noticeable how you're starting this transit with habits that once you finish this transit is unrecognizable.
It's great for like cutting back on things. Like if you're looking to quit smoking, if you're looking to get back into working out, if you're looking to cut things out of your diet. Also Mars rules your 4th house of home. So I think some of you guys are realizing we need to scale back, we need to declutter, we need to organize, we need to label because the house feels like it's a mess. Jupiter's kind of hanging out back in your 4th soon. So if you guys are looking to move, you're going to downsize and get everything ready to do that. If you have moved, then it's a matter of feeling like you're unpacking and getting organized. Several months of Mars in your 6th tells me that you need to find a way to work wellness or fitness into your daily routine. And Mars ruling your 4th makes me feel like, can you create a space in your home where you can either work or work out? So it's going to make sense for your schedule. And whether you want to work at home, start a home business, be in real estate, or you just want to create that space where you're like, I know I'm going to get my hour of fitness in. It needs to work with your schedule. So you need to be flexible and make little changes to see kind of what works for your new routines. Mars retrograde trine Saturn, your chart ruler in the 2nd, also makes me feel like you're cutting back on what you're eating or you're cutting back on your spending because you have some kind of goal. Maybe you're kind of in between jobs or you're working 2 part-time jobs and you're trying to kind of make ends meet, and perhaps maybe you'll settle on one when Mars goes direct. And Mars also rules your 11th house of friends and goals. So I also think this is about you balancing your financial responsibilities with your schedule and realizing like, okay, I can only do so much or I can only spend so much, and I got to work my schedule in a way where I'm communicating with people better. And the squares to Neptune and Jupiter very much is just communication. It's your mindset, and maybe feeling a little discombobulated with Mars quincunx, Pluto in your sign. To me, this screams you want your body to change, or you want to grow stronger. And the strength doesn't just come from the physical stuff, it's the mindset. So get into the habit of like mantras, listening to motivational things, watching motivational speeches, get into the habit of like journaling, do breath work, breathing, to help you with the process of this change.
And then the most significant thing here is the square to Jupiter. So like before Jupiter came through your third house, you were working a warehouse job. And now Jupiter going through your third, you started to learn how to make lemonades, right? With with lemons that life threw you. And now Mars is going into Gemini. And now this is you segueing out of your old work. And you're now taking your mastery of making lemonades and you're creating a lemonade stand. So for many of you, this is taking evolved abilities and it's integrating these new skills into your lifestyle. If you've learned how to discern intuitively people's intentions in seconds, how do you integrate that new attitude towards how you really live it? And this will really help a lot of you segue into new areas of work, kind of like Virgo, or at least augment what you're already doing and efficiently make it more lucrative.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. Aquarius and Aquarius rising, you got Mars going retrograde in Gemini, and this is moving retrograde through your natal 5th house.
You getting pregnant or you getting someone pregnant. Congratulations. That's that.
Oh boy.
Uranus in your 4th, you're probably not going to see it coming. So if you don't want a baby, then wrap it up so you won't be...
I know a couple Aquarius risings that are already pregnant.
Right. Oh,
they're already like, I'm like, well.
Yeah. And if you get pregnant now, it's going to be a Gemini. So congratulations.
I've been watching my calendar. I was like, no. I think that Mars being in a sister sign, Mars trine Saturn in your 1st is you're not willing to settle for less. You are super committed to what you want, your goals and your vision. So, when in doubt, talk it out, communicate. But yeah, that North Node, Uranus in your 4th, square Saturn, I mean, it's basically saying you are changing, you're maturing, you're growing up, your home life is changing. And with Mars retrograde, how you think about children, how you communicate about children, how you communicate with lovers, it's changing. And I think the biggest challenge is probably, if you are pregnant, learning how to party and have fun while remaining sober with the trines to Saturn. Also, Mars in a square to Jupiter and Neptune is because of potential new creative projects, because of children, because of changes in your love life. It's really affecting your resources or your self-esteem with the squares to planets in Pisces. Yeah.
And I think for a lot of creatives too, you've strengthened your character so much. It's taking a much more focused approach towards everything you love doing. So for a lot of Aquarians, it's like you always knew you were good at playing basketball, but now Saturn has gone through your sign and you realize you can really be a legacy player. So now that you're more serious about yourself than ever with Saturn in your sign, Mars is having you create so much more creatively now that you take yourself seriously. It's not like before where you would play basketball games knowing you were good, but you didn't really put your heart into it. Versus now you realize you could be one of the greatest, and now you're going to put everything into what you do. And it's going to be seen a lot more. And Scorpio's in your 10th, so it's going to transform how people see you and what grounding you gain.
I think your 10th house stuff that's going on with the eclipses in the 10th house and the South Node there, you're redefining who you are out in the world. Maybe you're making a job change. Maybe you're shifting from being like, I work, to I'm a parent. And yeah, I mean, it all rubs Scorpio the wrong way. So if you're somebody who has wanted to, be self-employed, there could be a sudden job change or a job loss that prompts you to have to jump into your hobbies and be like, okay, what can I do? How can I make money? Especially with the squares to Pisces planets. Yeah. And I think it's just be careful taking risks. It's not a time to launch a new venture. It's a time to kind of try things out, see what brings you pleasure, and not spend too much money on it, not try to go ham on, a full-blown launch. It's about kind of diversifying your interest in your hobbies to see like what could sell. But yeah, Mars retrograde, I mean, that's a long period of Mars being in your 5th house. So you could be going back and forth trying to get pregnant, and then maybe you finally do when it trines Saturn. It can also be that you're rethinking something in regards to your love life and who you're dating, and like there could be more than one person that's kind of in the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you mentioned the possible loss of job with the South Node. That's actually very true, especially because Pluto's coming through your sign. So this is ending cycles that are collective beyond anything we're conscious of. So know that if you do lose a career path, Jupiter in your 2nd is expanding your ability. I think Aqua risings have the potential to be some of the wealthiest people this cycle. So it's like if you lose a job, you make money, so much money, that square your 5th.
Yeah.
How do you allocate that money to support a new self-employed creative passion?
Yeah, and you have to know what's going to make you happy, and you have to trust in your talents, and even if that's just scaling back to do what you really want to do, whatever shifts happen for you professionally, it's to bring you more happiness and more joy long term.
Whew.
And then we've got Pisces and Pisces rising, a Mars retrograde in the 4th house of Gemini.
Well, congratulations, Pisces, because Jupiter retrograde back in your sign is going to finalize the evolution of you divinely with Neptune, which I feel like no one really understands what Pisces is going through with that. It's a lot of collective. I think only Scorpio might be able to like see into it with Sag, but like it's very muddled. So it can be very difficult to understand where you feel at home when people look at you like a fucking delusional freak. Let me just be completely honest. So it's not like that. For Pisces who follow the narrative, Pisces have the decision to follow the false narratives and be a superhero, or get the backlash like a Justin Bieber who exposes what happens in the industry, what happens. And I don't think that's the best example, but with Mars in the 4th house, this can open up real estate opportunity, even indirectly. But this is very geared towards changing your comfort zone, because Saturn is preparing to go in your sign and change everything through you. And this is going to challenge doubts and beliefs that bring to reality your divinity. This is difficult for Pisces because you represent an existence that towards mainstream culture is still seen as fantasy and science fiction and inherently metaphysical. So you're synthesizing a lot of how to take the evolution of yourself and break through into more understanding of where you truly belong and feel at home. And it's going to be a complete and total shit show.
Yeah, it is.
That I think you're going to love and hate.
I think it's about breaking through the delusions with Jupiter and Neptune back in your sign. And the mutable squares produce change. I guess the one positive is like if you're moving from one house to another, this can support that because Mars in the 2nd can be like, do I want to live here or there? Rules the 2nd in the 4th. Do I want to live here or do I want to live there? Or I'm buying land here to build it and then I will move. Like there's something like that about investing more into your ideas when it comes to home and family. The problem that I feel that's really happening is that Mars in Gemini is about documents. It's the ruler of your 9th. If you're trying to move to another country or another place, you're hoping that that's going to happen because a visa comes through or that you get citizenship or that you can buy the house, and there can be lots of changes and things that you overlooked with the squares to Jupiter and Neptune. It could also be like, because Mars rules legality, if you're going through changes in a relationship as a result of this last Mercury retrograde, you might realize, shit, now I gotta move, or we're breaking up, or I'm in love with somebody who lives in another country, so I gotta move there. You just want to watch out and like try to stay as grounded as physically possible because you're gonna have Mars retrograde, Neptune retrograde, Jupiter retrograde. Everything's internal and like you're idealizing your life and what it could look like, but there could be conflict and strife financially or in the family in terms of a home situation. Maybe it's taking longer to build a home or develop or get the sale of a home going, and then there's some legal issues as a result of it. The positive, because we want to talk about the positive, is that Saturn trine, I think, is saying that the being held back a little bit is a test of faith. You're taking time to review what your beliefs are. You're taking time alone. And although it can be challenging, it's like likely, I think, when we see like the full moon eclipses that are taking place in the spring, and then Mars has gone through Cancer, and it's going to start trining you. Like, everything's going to pan out. You're just going to have a delay with your home situation. If you guys aren't careful, you could move a couple times because you aren't clear with the details, you know?
Like false starts and stuff like that.
Yeah. Wiring of the home, siblings in the home, some kind of drama there is very possible, or having to return back home and needing to go back home because of a financial situation.
Fights in the home, private issues, which are necessary because these will bubble up so that you confront and deal with them.
Yeah.
And create deeper capacity to trust. And Chiron is in your second. So you're healing how valuable you sense you are. And that's going to go a long way into how much more comfortable you feel with the right people.
Yeah, and I would say just have a to-do list. You know, Mars in the second house that wants to be active, like rearrange furniture, like get active with some of your family, like go to a family reunion, like go and travel to visit people, like make phone calls and interact with them. So that way you're not having arguments and quarrels and other things like that in the home. Yeah. Well, hopefully that was helpful for you guys. That was Mars retrograde through all the 12 signs. Let us know, where is it taking place in your chart? What are you anticipating? How is it affecting you? What are you excited for? How are you planning to make the most of this time in productive ways? Look back at the eclipses that we had in 2020 and 2021 that were in Gemini, because it's going to reactivate some of those points. For all those dates, check out our other video that we did on the Mars retrograde in Gemini, and we may even touch on it again in the future. Otherwise, take care. Thank you for your support, your likes, your comments, your shares. Join our memberships. You make it possible for us to keep doing this, and we will see.
I hope you enjoy Mars and Cap. I mean, Gemini.
Mars and Cap. That's not going to be for a while.
I'm thinking about the apocalypse.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon. Take care.